What if I told you there's a whole vocabulary of funny sounding words that are manipulating and causing you to do horrible things to your personal finances?
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
I love it. So basically what you're saying is today we're going to be going into a vocabulary lesson, right? We're going to learn some new words that maybe we did not know otherwise, right?
As we all know, my strength lies in mathematical, analytical skills, not in pronouncing. Okay, I even said that wrong.
Not in pronouncing.
Pronunciating. I have trouble reading, pronouncing. So this ought to be. This is like self-torture for myself. But I'm going to do it. But let's get this thing on track. By the way, this is the Money Guy Show. I need you. Here's several things I need you to do for us. I need you to go to moneyguy.com. If you have not given us your email address, need you to do that. Also need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You see this little counter right here behind us? We use this counter to keep up with how many YouTube subscribers we have, or just continue to listen to us on iTunes or out there, however you listen to your favorite podcast.
See, here's what you did. You told them that we need their email address. Let us reframe that. You need to give us your email address, because one thing that we've started doing for our shows, if there's a really helpful spreadsheet or a rundown or a checklist or something that might be valuable that you can use, we've actually started dribbling those into our emails. The only way that you're going to get that useful tool that we're sharing, that useful summary, that useful spreadsheet, that useful checklist, is if you go out to moneyguy.com, register with your email address, and we will make sure that you get those valuable tools. It's not for us, it's for you.
I like that. This is why and this is perfect lead in for this show, is because what Bo just did is that he used trying to tell you how it would benefit us by benefiting you first.
That's right.
It's a very good manipulation skill.
Oh,
there's a lot of things out there in the world that take advantage of. We are hardwired to do certain things. You know, a lot of this is built into our DNA because of many years ago when there's the fight or flight and other things. Well, these things get taken advantage of by marketers and other people who are trying to get you to do things with your financial life that might not be in your best interest.
I think it's safe to say, Brian, that we as humans are emotional creatures, right? If that weren't the case, then our news cycle, our media cycle would look very different than it actually does.
They are tapping into the fact that they know that we remember negative stuff much more than we do good news, and that sells more advertising. That's why always be very careful of that when you're basing your financial decision-making off of the emotional reaction of what's going on with the news channel. So let's kind of jump into these funny sounding names that definitely impact your financial life. The first one, the Diderot Effect.
Yeah, the Diderot Effect.
So here's the Diderot Effect is, we tell people toys begot more toys.
That's right.
It seems like the more stuff you buy, you're filling an empty void that just is insatiable appetite.
That's
You're
right.
not going to make yourself happy by filling it up. And it's also, think about, you buy a new house. What do you have to do with the new house? You have to buy new furniture. You have to buy new drapes.
Yep.
You buy a new pair of shoes. Guess what you need? You need a new belt.
That's
you need
right.
new slacks that go with that. You need a new shirt. It's the Diderot Effect is the reaction from, it opens up something in your psychology. When you buy one thing, you feel the need to keep buying more. And
what's really frustrating is sometimes it's not even on purpose. It's not like, hey, I need a whole new outfit. We found this recently. We asked the designer to help us look at some stuff in the bathroom. I said, hey, I just want to change the shower, right? I want to do the shower. And she's like, awesome, that sounds great. And then once you do that, then we got to change the cabinetry, and we got to change this color, and we got to change the floor. And I was like, no, that's not all the things I want to do. She said, no, those are the things. If you change X, then Y, Z, and ABC also have to change.
So, by the way, this funny sounding term, the Diderot Effect, comes from anthropologist Grant McCracken.
Oh, what a cool
I
name.
love that name. In 1988, and it's named after the French philosopher Denis Diderot, who first described the effect in an essay titled "Regrets for My Old Dressing Gown." And it was really a warning to those who have more taste than fortune.
What a horrible, it's beautiful the way he described it, but what if someone describes you as that?
is more taste
you have
than
more
fortune.
taste than fortune.
If my wife would describe me as the exact opposite based upon my clothes purchases. I do not want more clothes. She buys more clothes. I would rather have more fortune than taste.
In the South, we have a saying that kind of goes along with that. We say people have
more of a Texas thing.
Or is it Texas?
Yeah.
A champagne taste on a beer budget.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was thinking we say in the South you have a champagne taste on a beer budget.
That's true. I was thinking all hat, no cattle. Was the Texas
that is
one.
a good Texas one.
So here's the planning opportunity with Diderot Effect. Is that commonly the Diderot Effect is brought up as an anti-capitalist mantra. But we don't go that extreme with it, because I think what it actually is, if you go and you read the essay on the regrets for my old dressing gown, what happens to Mr. Diderot is he's not an uncommon story of a windfall person.
Yeah.
People who win the lottery, who come into a large sum of money and just do not process it well. And we always tell people, when you have this effect, you need to be very disciplined.
That's right.
With how you change things in your life. Know where your happiness lies. Know when you need to quit swimming upstream. And, and if you do come into a windfall like Diderot did, build in a blow amount a little bit. Build in there do nothing period so that you're smart and reasonable. And then develop a full financial plan or some type of plan of attack so that you don't fall into making bad decisions where the toys begot more toys and you get yourself in a negative situation.
There were two things I heard you say in there, Brian, that I think are so valuable. And I've seen you do this, whether it's someone who sells a piece of land that's been in the family forever, or someone sells a big business, or maybe they receive an inheritance. One thing you always tell them is you don't have to move quickly. Whatever decisions you make, you don't have to move very, very quickly to jump into decisions, because you need some time to process that. You always tell them, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then once you kind of get them to slow down, the very next thing you tell them is, what's your ultimate end goal? How do you begin with the end in mind? It's amazing when you start making these big decisions. If you were to think about the full outfit that you were going to have to buy, it's going to make you make a better decision on that first dressing gown that you buy, on that first belt that you buy. It's a real easy way to keep yourself from getting into that lifestyle creep scenario.
Before we go on to the next funny sounding term, move on past this one. I want to remind everybody, we also tell everybody, I love people doing family vacations. Buy experiences. Don't just buy more toys to fill up the closets, the garages. That doesn't add value to your life. So be very careful. That's the Diderot effect, is when you buy one thing, how it leads you down this progression of buying more and more, this consumerism that can be very dangerous. Let's talk about another one.
Okay.
This one is used a lot in TV, movies, and so forth. And I'm going to hopefully not slaughter this, because when you go on YouTube, there are like 4 to 5 different pronunciations. I'm going to go with the one that had the coolest English accent and it sounded the best. So what could a Southerner screw up about this?
Of course, nothing.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, the Zeigarnik effect.
Did I say it? Did I say it?
Perfect. You know.
I wish do you have a cool English accent so you could say it like the YouTube video that we listened to?
No, I don't. I was going to do it, but then I was like, well, this will be out on the internet forever. I'm not going to do that.
So this is, if you ever, I'll tell you, I kind of did this off my own experience. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about 3 things I forgot to do during the day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The Zeigarnik effect is, it's really your desire, your human desire, survival desire to close loops.
Okay.
And it's a psychological effect, is that we typically as humans will remember incomplete tasks more than we will completed tasks. So if you actually finish, you close the loop on something, your brain has an ability to purge that thing and move on to the next thing. It's something that's built into us. That's why when you're doing the Zeigarnik effect, if you think about how marketers and others use this, think about how TV shows end with cliffhangers.
Oh, man. Even TV shows that shouldn't have cliffhangers. I'm thinking, Bachelor, Bachelorette, I'm looking at you. There'll be a to be continued at the end.
They put that on there because they don't want you to be able to close the loop, because then you'll be thinking about it. You're more likely to want to binge or think about it and come back to see how to close the loop. That's right. That human nature effect. Well, I will tell you, with personal finances, where I think these things come in is that a lot of us, we are horrible procrastinators with our personal finances. We don't do estate plans. We don't do the right amount of cash reserves, or we'll buy something that's inappropriate in the order of operations. And then those are the things that are going to wake us up in the middle of the night because we realize we have this sense of dread because we're not closing the loop of getting our financial life and our financial household in complete order. So the planning opportunity that we talk about with these things is if you're one of these people that has ignored the basics and it's now built up to the point that you are losing sleep, that you are finding that you just don't have a comfort level, this means you probably need to do the hard work that stinks while you're doing it. Like talking about who you want to buying life insurance or who's going to get, take charge of your children if something happens to you. Those are uncomfortable conversations, but there is a reason we call it peace of mind after you do it, is because you are closing the loop, and that Zeigarnik effect will let you move on.
And, there are two things that could happen. One is that you could very well be procrastinating and you just don't want to prioritize getting those financial things in order. And that is where you have to have that conversation with yourself and say, man, I need to do these things. But frankly, sometimes life just happens and we get busy, whether it be community involvement or work stresses or family stresses, whatever the case may be. One really great way to make sure that things aren't slipping through is that if you are someone who finds yourself waking up at night thinking about those things that you didn't do, or did I do my IRA contributions, or have I funded this? That might be a prime time example that it's time to think about hiring a professional to step in and help you with your personal finances. Nice. Another thing that we always tell people to do, Brian, is, the Zeigarnik effect talks about how it's really easy for us to focus on things we have not done rather than things that we have done. Well, that allows us to focus on our failings rather than our accomplishments.
Once again, negative creatures of humans.
Very negative creatures. So one of the things we tell folks to do is always make a list of the accomplishments. A really great thing to do is before you do your New Year's resolution every year, before you sit down and think about the things you want to accomplish next year, do a list of all the things that happened last year that you're really, really proud of. Hey, my net worth did this. I maxed out my 401k. I got those estate documents done. It's nice to remind yourself of those things that you have done that have worked really well so that you don't constantly live in the state of dread of, oh, I haven't done this. I haven't completed that. I haven't moved on to this thing. And that's a really great way to push off that dreaded midlife crisis type thing.
I like that thought process of turning a negative into a positive by taking inventory of your wins.
That's right.
So that you can avoid those midlife crises and other things when just life happens.
Yep.
We all know it happens. So let's talk about the next concept. And this is the one, I don't know if I'm going to, the Pareto principle?
That's it. You nailed it.
Did I nail it?
Absolutely.
I'll try not to say it again since the only place to go from here is down. But this is the 80-20 rule.
Yeah,
we've all heard of this. This is, the 80-20 rule means about 20% of things are vital and 80% are trivial.
Yep.
And when we talk about that, if you hear about companies, you hear something like 80% of complaints come from 20% of customers.
Yeah.
80% of revenue comes from 20% of customers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these rules out there, and it is interesting how this stuff actually ends up working out, is that we end up focusing on all the things we have going on, all the stresses, when really there's only 20% there that really requires true focus.
Yeah, Brian, we have a really close friend down in Georgia, a dear friend of ours. And we used to always talk about how busy we would be. The show was growing, the firm was growing, and all these things would be happening. And he said, guys, I got the solution for you. To go take everything on your desk right now, throw it in the trash can. Give it a week, and the important things will come back up. Well, I never knew it, but what he was describing was a Pareto principle.
It really is.
20% of the stuff that matters will come back up. 80% of the stuff is just trivial fluff.
So what's the planning opportunity here? So I think that this is more of you look at your day-to-day life and you figure out where you need to allocate your resources. Because there's probably a lot of things in your financial life that is just noise. Yep. I mean, there are so many things that you're probably hyper-focusing on, that you're losing hours in the day, when that 20% is where the ideal is of what's vital and what's going to get that army of dollar bills in the place is going to bring you the financial success you've really kind of dreamed about.
One of the things that we talk about, we have a saying, if you ever come visit our office, you see this written on a whiteboard. It says, don't get busy doing nothing. And we often try to tell people, don't get lost in doing the things every day that aren't ultimately moving you towards your ultimate goals. So one of the the things that we tell folks they can do is think about all the activities that you must complete in a day, just sort of the daily activities you have, and do an ABC detail. What are the activities you should be doing? What are the activities you shouldn't be doing? And then we think there are 3 Ds, and I'm kind of stealing this from one of our good friends, Michael Hyatt. There are some activities that you should do, take ownership of and do those. There are some that you should delegate. You should have someone else do those, whether if it's cutting the grass, maybe it's time to hire a lawn care company or something like that. And then there are the things you should just delete. Things you just get out of your life you don't need. If you can think about those tasks, that will be a really easy way to get yourself to focus on that 20% and not get lost in the 80%.
Well, I think it also gives you clarity. I mean, because there's so many, especially life pulls on you, work pulls on you, loved ones pull on you, all these things. So if you can come into the clarity of what you need to focus on, I think productivity is going to be the direct beneficiary. Right. So if you can kind of fine tune, I know we've used another concept. If you know you need to devote more time on, writing down the goals of let's get the estate plan done. Let's get our cash reserves in order. Let's, all these things that are really, am I at 20% of savings or 25% to become a hyper saver? All these things are going to help you kind of focus on that 20% that's going to generate the yield, the dividend of 80% of your future growth opportunity.
That's right.
Let's talk about this next one. This is a funny sounding thing that I came across in the last 2 weeks, and I love this one. I've moved this one. This is the last concept. I put it on here on purpose because this one encapsulated so many of the things I see from a lot of our clients, a lot of our listeners that reach out to us, and it's this hedonic treadmill or hedonic adaptation. Okay. Did I say that right?
Yeah, the hedonic treadmill or the hedonic adaptation.
What I think about these things, and I saw this from Carl Richards, he's the one that this came up on my Twitter feed, is that if you think about the hedonic treadmill, this is what happens. This is what it's talking about, is that you say, if I could just make 20% more, my life would be so much happier. Yeah. You get to that level, and then somehow you're still not, your happiness, your baseline happiness didn't change. Then you tell yourself once again, if I could just make this much more, I would be so much more happy.
Right.
And once again, you reach these things. That's a human nature thing. The hedonic treadmill is one of those things where we as humans have the ability to adapt both up and down rapidly. Yep. I mean, you think what's going to bring you happiness or some big change, like you get a big income structure, a big income pay raise, you think that your happiness factor is going to be at this level forever. It doesn't. You find that you stabilize very quickly and go back to your baseline. Same thing if all of a sudden your life changed and you got laid off.
You lose a job, yeah.
You lose a job or something happens. You're amazed that within 3 months, typically, you're back to a baseline of happiness. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it just shows how you as an individual have to kind of take inventory and start really becoming more self-aware of what is the thing that creates you happiness. And I want to give some tips on this, is that if you're a person, like we see it, I have this discussion with people who come into windfalls. Think about lottery winners typically go broke somewhere between 9 months to 5 years.
Which is wild, which is
crazy. And I think the reason is that they're trying to fill this insatiable appetite. They'll go buy the new house, they'll buy the new car, then they'll go buy the new boat, then they'll go buy the secondary house because they're always trying to chase that happiness factor. Here's my advice to you. If you come into windfall money, also make sure, based upon this hedonic treadmill, do a time release of your resource. I had a client who sold business, bought a nice house. We then structured buying the car a number of months later. Structured talking about a vacation property months later, because it doesn't make sense to stack these things. I think you actually run the chance of numbing yourself to those wins. So on the way up on the income spectrum or asset spectrum, try to spread out those wins so you still get the enjoyment. I saw a great example where if you get a big pay raise, you start going out to eat every night, you're going to find that you just build that into your lifestyle. It's not a luxury. It loses its just sense, how good it feels to you. Spread that out. Now, the opposite is true if negative life events happen to you. If you all of a sudden don't, 1 month cut your cable, if you lost your job, I don't want you next month just to cut your cable bill and then I don't want you spreading out 2 months later. Now you're going to change where you only eat out, every 3 months.
Right.
Do everything all at once, because with this hedonic treadmill, it's much better for you to experience the pain all at once so you can get to that stabilization process as fast as possible. These things are very powerful. I liked it because I will tell you, as I have walked up the scale of success, I'm always amazed that things aren't just as sweet as you think they're going to be.
Yeah.
I kind of started realizing this as a kid. I remember I used to love going to a friend's house to play pool, shoot pool at his house.
Right.
We'd hang out. My dad, we ended up getting a pool table as I was a kid. All of a sudden, playing pool wasn't as much fun once we owned a pool table. And I tie this into this hedonic treadmill, is that you just adapt and you get numb as you own. The same thing with music. I've used that as an example before. Is when old school Brian, when you had to listen to the radio to hear your favorite song, you really cherished when that song came on. Now that you can go stream any song out there, it becomes much more of a commodity.
Yeah.
So I use this concept of the hedonic treadmill and the adaption concept to really take a self-inventory of what brings you happiness.
That's right.
Because if you think it's money, it's not going to be. The research shows that, we talked about this, Bo.
Yep.
The research shows that around $75,000 of income is kind of where income kind of caps out on the happiness factor. There's a direct correlation as you go up. And I think we were talking about this. Now, we didn't go look it up because we're knuckleheads. But Malcolm Gladwell...
Yeah, I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in one of his books. I think it was David and Goliath. Don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. But he was talking about how even parenting, it's really hard up to a certain income threshold, because it's hard trying to make ends meet and try to be able to cover the basics for your kids. And then and again, I'm going to butcher the numbers, but it was something from like $75,000 to $150,000 of household income. It's pretty comfortable. You're able to do the things you want to do and have the things you want to have. But then even once you go above that, it starts getting harder to parent again, because now when you're telling your kids that they can't have something or you can't do something, it's because you're making the choice not because there's scarcity there. So even though you would think, if you had all the money in the world, everything would just be rainbows and unicorns, that's not necessarily the case. And the hedonic treadmill suggests that exact thing.
Well, and I think as a lot of you listeners are out and viewers start having more success, you're going to feel, because we have a whole industry that's trying to push you to buy more, to consume more. And I'm going to tell you, if you could figure out what grounds you, create a financial plan to figure out what is your success, how much do you truly need to live off of, what are you saving for, it's going to ground you from swimming upstream for no reason, just to be a bigger consumer. Because you're going to find that it's just sad, I think, if you get on this treadmill, and you're going to find that it doesn't bring you the fulfillment that you probably thought was going to happen when you consumed or purchased that item.
Yeah, it makes me think of, there's a movie I love, Blow, starring Johnny Depp, and it chronicles the life of George Young, who was a drug dealer or whatever. It's maybe not the best movie in the world. But anyways, his father, played by Ray Liotta in the movie, has a great quote, and he says, sometimes you're flush and sometimes you're bust. And when you're up, it's never as good as it seems. And when you're down, it feels like you'll never be up again. But life goes on. And I thought that's so true. What he was describing was a hedonic treadmill. And so we just thought about, from like a planning opportunity, like in terms of how you make your financial decisions, try not to let your emotions get the best of you. Try not to make decisions at the highest of high emotion, the lowest of low emotion. When it's big things like buying cars or buying houses or expanding your lifestyle, or even when it's seemingly small decisions, like going to cash when the market gets really scary. That's a decision at the low end that probably isn't going to set you up for success long term.
Man, I love how these funny little titles, these funny little things have such big impacts. I just felt like knowledge is power. If you can understand how marketers are using these things, or how human nature has limitations on, side effects, you'd say, of things that are hardwired into us. If you could have that knowledge, you then have the power to make sure you're adapting your financial plan, your course of actions, so that you're still making the best decisions to give you the best version of yourself for financial independence and reaching all those goals. That's really what we're looking for. Right. That's why we come and we do this show, the Money Guy family. You guys, we want this to be the classroom for you to come to, learn, soak it in, reach a level of success that you'll be like, wow, I can't believe these guys just continue to love on me, load us up with all this free advice. That is the abundance cycle, because our goal is, after you reach a level of success where you're either too busy or you're just to the point that you need somebody that is, your assets have gotten to the point where you just need somebody to look over your shoulder and give you a second opinion, you'll want to pay us back by reaching out to us at Money Guy Family. Right. So you can go to moneyguy.com, reach out to the Contact Us page. You can go to Abound Wealth Contact Us page.
Yep.
We love working with clients all over the country. We feel so blessed. And I feel like on a show like this, we ought to leave a cliffhanger.
Okay.
But we're not manipulators. We're more educators, so it wouldn't be appropriate. Did I cover everything, Bo?
Yeah, I think that's great. Hey, if there's any, one of the things we love doing is we've done this show before. We've added some concepts. If there's some we missed, if there's some like cool financial concepts that have some funny words you think we ought to know about, or maybe we didn't put on our list, send us an email. You can write us. You can go to our Contact Us page.
Put them on our YouTube comments page.
Put them in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for letting us do this show for you. It's fun. We love it. And we hope you'll continue to tell your friends and family about us.
So subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on however you're listening to this podcast if you're still on the audio side of it. And make sure you go to moneyguy.com and give us that email address. We need those email addresses just so we can keep you apprised of everything that's going on, plus give you some of these awesome deliverables that we're creating. So I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. We'll be back every week with new content.